Hi, welcome to my channel. Today I'll be talking about this book, which is The Uninhabitable Earth by David Wallace-Wells. As you may be able to tell from the title, it's a climate change book, and while it's a bit of a tired genre right now, it's something I'm really passionate about. So when I saw it in the store, I thought I'd give it a try, and after reading it, I can safely say it's one of the best books I've read in a while, and it's really important for lots of people to read this book because it will change your perspective on climate change. So everyone give it a try, it's quite cheap on Amazon. And yeah, let's dive into why I like this book so much. I think this is a really different way of approaching climate change to other books I've read. It really references studies by name and doesn't really try to appeal to emotion as much as just lay out the facts and let the reader make its own choice. I think this is a really good way of doing it, especially for me, because I really like reading about the science behind climate change rather than just the populist opinions that it wants to push forward. Another area that makes this book unique is how blunt it is. This book is really an ultimatum to Western society, and that is, it's not just the natural world, it's the human world. It's not just underdeveloped countries, it's Europe and America, and it won't just be our children or children's children who suffer, but meaningful change will come in our lifetime. And that's something I really found interesting in the book, and really made me reconsider my life choices and how I'm considering to climate change. One of my favourite quotes in the book is, "Should anything save us, it will be technology. But you need more than tautologies to save the planet. And especially within the futurist fraternity of Silicon Valley, technologists have little more than fairy tales to offer." That seems like an odd quote to enjoy, but it really cut to the heart of all the preconceived notions I had of climate change before reading this book. I really think that we could just technology our way out of climate change and the consequences of it, but I see now it's not really the case. And while technology will be the route we take to get out of climate change, it will be down to the policymakers and the general public to really put their foot down and make a difference in the next 20, 30 years. While I really enjoyed this book, I do think it's not without fault, and I think one of the biggest negatives I could say is that as a popular book, I think it's slightly too negative for its own good. It talks about the scourge of apathy towards climate change in many Western countries, and I think this negativity could exacerbate that in the future. For example, it talks about how big companies and policymakers have to bear most of the brunt of making change, and that could disempower the regular person and lead to a sort of apathy from them. However, I think maybe reading between the lines, the true message of the book is that everyone has a stake in this future, and that we all need to make a difference together. I thought I'd just give you a quick overview of the three most important takeaways I got from this book. And the three most important are that climate change will affect everyone in the world and everyone has a stake in climate change. That climate change is affecting us right now and is not some sort of distant threat, but it is right now. And that every single person with a shift in mentality can make a difference. The first of them is that climate change will affect all of us. I mentioned in my intro, but I think this is definitely the most important takeaway. When the author talks about sort of a public apathy towards climate change, and that's being a huge challenge facing climate scientists, I think a huge part of this apathy is that people in America, here in the UK, often are very relaxed with regard to climate change, simply because they think that the wealth and latitude of their country will protect them from any bad parts of climate change. And this is simply not true. The summer heat wave is becoming more and more common theme, and since I've been alive, I can remember 4 or 5 record-breaking heat waves. And I'm not that good at statistics, but you don't have 4 record-breaking heat waves in 17 years and it still be business as usual. I think climate change is really affecting every country, and it's affecting them right now. Another example that he uses is natural disasters in California. And I think this is a really telling example where $1 million villas in Santa Barbara are being washed away by mud flows that are caused by human-induced wildfires and drought. My next takeaway is that climate change is a really imminent problem and will affect society in a huge way within the lifetime of most people who are working age now or at school. And this is a huge problem because people think that climate change is something that will happen at the turn of the next century. But in reality, 2050 is sort of the hard limit for changing our course on climate change, and 2030 is when we'll start seeing huge effects of climate change outside of the tropical regions. And to illustrate this point, I'd like to read a short extract from the book. The basic rule of thumb for staple cereal crops grown at optimal temperatures is that for every degree of warming, yields decline by 10%. To put that in context, the Paris Climate Agreement asks all countries to limit warming to 2 degrees. But even in that context, this is a 20% reduction in the amount of cereal crops the world will grow. In a world where we expect the population to grow by 2 billion before 2050, do we really think we can support that population on 20% reduced cereal crops? My second point on this topic is that many of the conflicts facing us right now are a taste of what's to come with increased climate change. Conflicts like the one in Syria right now have been shown by scientists to be linked with climate change. While they're not all caused by climate change, for every half a degree of increase in temperature, those kind of conflicts increase in probability by 10 to 20%. Even restricting that to the Paris Climate Agreement, we are still looking at a 40 to 80% increase in conflicts by 2050. That is a huge worry to countries like the UK and like the US, because that could spread these kind of conflicts into some of the poorer European countries and into the poorer countries in Central America, and bring conflicts right to the doorstep of many of the richer Western nations. Finally, the idea that everyone can change their mindset and make a difference. Sticking with the idea of food shortages that I mentioned just now, I don't think that, and scientists definitely agree with me, that the current consumption habits of the West are sustainable. Taking the figure of 20% reduced output of grains by 2050, we will not be able to support 9.8 billion in people in 2050. However, if we see that creating 1 kilo of beef takes 10 kilos of feed grain to make something less dense in calories, we can see that people in developed countries reduce meat eating, the availability of feed grain in the rest of the world will dramatically increase. Pair this with the ecological destruction that beef rearing causes, especially in tropical regions, and you have 2 great reasons to reduce meat consumption and 2 easy areas that humans can help protect the planet. I just talked about meat eating there, but the book also mentions palm oil cultivation and consumption and how that decimates rainforest regions, particularly in Southeast Asia. That's another type of product you should definitely try and avoid. Unfortunately, it's in every single product you kind of consume. It's in soap, it's in food, it's in everything. However, looking for products that say no palm oil is a great way to try and save the environment. That's all of my key takeaways from this book, and I'd highly recommend reading this book and taking a look at the ways in which you contribute to climate change and how you can make a difference.